Hi, Life Team. It's Brian again from last week. Thanks for inviting me back to Life Team to talk to you guys a little bit more about God and atheism and how we can have conversations with people that we don't always agree with. I'm still up here in beautiful southern Minnesota, so sadly I can't join you in person. For anyone who's wondering, yes, it's the middle of September, so it's already winter here in southern Minnesota. It's the delightful place to be. As Angie probably introduced, tonight we're going to start a conversation, a 4-week conversation about atheism and how to have conversations with people who might not agree with us about our faith. The first place we have to start is actually talking about a controversial word, arguments. Has anyone here ever been in an argument? Show of hands. Again, I'm not there, and this is a recording, not live. So if Angie or somebody could text me and let me know if people raise their hands, that's great. Hoping some of you did. When you think about an argument that you had in the past, you might be thinking about something like what happened to me the other day. Again, I'm in Minnesota for context. I walked into a room of Minnesota Vikings fans, and they were all wearing their Minnesota Vikings jerseys for reasons that escaped me. And I foolishly threw out there that I thought that the Green Bay Packers were the more historically relevant team to America. They responded by suggesting, in a much meaner way, that I'm of sub-average intelligence, and the conversation sort of descended until I ran out of the room, maybe crying. That wasn't really an argument so much as it was what we call a fight, right? It was emotionally driven and not really based on facts that anyone agreed upon. It was just people expressing what they thought was right. Again, no facts involved. What else isn't an argument? Your opinion. So if you assert that, say, chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream, and your friend says, no, vanilla ice cream is far superior to chocolate ice cream. Again, you're not really having an argument, you're just expressing your opinions because there's nothing factual about the things that you're saying, we just have stated preferences. This is true unless, of course, we're talking about Rocky Road ice cream, which is clearly a bad ice cream. That's a joke. So these are all not arguments, but rather debates or fights. And you shouldn't have fights. The only time you should have a fight is if you're defending someone's honor or if it's with Jay Osminski. It's okay to fight with Jay Osminski. So we know what an argument isn't. An argument is not emotionally driven and not without facts and just based on your opinions. An argument is a conversation that is actually rooted in a place of agreement. To have a real argument, and this is fascinating and shocking in our current society, to have a real argument, the two sides actually have to start from a place where they agree and then grow from there. We both believe A, but we disagree on B and C. So how can we have a conversation that evolves that disagreement into a place where we do agree? Because that's the goal of an argument, is ultimately to arrive at what is true. So the first important part of an argument, we start from a place of agreement. The second thing that's really important for an argument is, again, no emotions, but rather it's based on logic. Logic is math with words, it's fun. A plus B equals C. If you really want to geek out about logic, we can do that in a different talk. The third thing that's really important for a successful argument is common vocabulary. If we're having an argument with someone, especially about something important like whether or not God exists, we need to make sure that we're talking about the same things and we're defining words in the same way. So why don't we do that now? Let's define some terms that are really important in argumentation. That way, when we enter into a conversation with someone about God, we can be sure that we're using the right language. The first word I want to talk about is the word belief. I believe XYZ. What does that mean when you say, I believe? Well, belief has a very technical definition. It is something that you hold to be the truth. Anything that you think in your brain that you hold to be true, that's a belief. How is that different than knowledge? How can we say, I know something? Because that is a little bit different than I believe something. Knowledge also has a very technical definition. Knowledge is when you believe something that is in fact the truth for outside reasons. So let's use an example. I believe I'm in Minnesota. I have to have a reason for that belief. Why do I believe I'm in Minnesota? Well, I drove here the other day, and also I just looked out the window and I see Minnesota. So I believe I'm in Minnesota. Now, how can I say I know I'm in Minnesota? Well, I guess I could go to Google Maps and say, yes, you can know my current location. Where am I? And I look at the map, and lo and behold, southern Minnesota. Also, I see Minnesota. So I think we can say, I know I am in Minnesota. Belief, something that you hold to be true. Knowledge, something that you hold to be true that actually is. Cool. I like to geek out about those things. So again, we can do a whole separate video on belief and knowledge. Another really important word, faith. We almost exclusively use the word faith in the context of religious belief. And that's okay. But what is faith, technically speaking? Again, a very accurate definition of faith is something that you believe based on the authority of someone or something else. So let's use a good example. I believe in gravity. I have some reasons. I'm not floating away, so something is keeping me from floating away. And really smart people, Isaac Newton, Einstein, other people who I'm sure are really, really smart, have done a lot of math, and they've come to the conclusion that there's this theory called gravity, and it is what keeps the Earth spinning and things from floating away. So that's called gravity. All right, I have faith that that is the reason I'm not floating away. I haven't proved it myself, and I have very few concrete reasons for believing that gravity is the reason I don't float away. So I have faith. Similarly, I can't walk up and start talking to God. I don't have that ability. However, I do have 2,000 years of history of people going all the way back to 12 guys that did walk up and talk to God. So, okay, I have faith that God exists. I also have some other reasons. We'll talk about those in a little bit. Faith, belief that something is true based on the authority of someone or something else. Let's get some more specific vocab going. What does it mean to be agnostic? I like languages. The word agnostic comes from a Greek word, gnosis, G-N-O-S-I-S. It means knowledge. When you put a in front of a word, it usually means the opposite of that word. So agnosis, or if we translate to English, agnostic, means I don't know, not knowing. In the context of religion, an agnostic is someone who claims, I don't know if God exists. What is it to doubt? So if we have someone who is a doubter about their faith, we usually use the word doubt in a very negative way. It has evolved into a negative connotation, but actually, again, technically, the word doubt doesn't have a negative meaning at all. Rather, it's a position that I don't have enough information right now, but I'm interested. So let's use a non-religion example of doubt. What if I told you that just over there, I have a very small purple hippopotamus? All right, you have some reasons to believe that. Brian's a trustworthy guy, never lied to me before. Okay, so maybe he does. I'm not sure, though, if purple hippopotami exist. I've never seen one before. I've never really read about purple hippopotamuses. So I've got some data in both directions here. So I'm going to take a position of doubting whether Brian actually has a purple hippopotamus. That's fair. You need to collect more information. It's pretty similar to agnosticism, but agnosticism is kind of laid back doubting. We're not really actively seeking in agnosticism. Doubting is, I need more data. Let's talk about people who are seeking. Kind of a casual definition here. Someone who is seeking to know more about Christianity or your faith in particular is someone who is in a position of doubt who wants to go and gather that more information to learn. Seekers are the people that we really want to engage these conversations with. What's an atheist? So again, let's do languages. Theo is a Greek word that means God. Atheo would mean no God. An atheist has taken a position, unlike a doubter or an agnostic. Their position is that God does not exist. Couple more words. A non-theist, or another word, a deist, is someone who believes that God exists, but who doesn't really participate in our lives or care about what happens to us. Their belief in God is that God created things and then kind of pieced out. A note on deism or non-theism. It's not really a thing. It was in the 17th and 18th century, a political reaction to church and state involvement in Europe. So let's just make a rule for ourselves. You're not allowed to be a deist unless you're an 18th century intellectual. So anyone here who's an 18th century intellectual, you're free to be a deist or a non-theist. Otherwise, not a position I'm letting you take. Finally, an anti-theist. This is an atheist who is actively opposed to religion. They want to go out and convince people that God does not exist. All right, that's our vocab lesson for the evening. Let's have some more fun now. So what we've been talking about a lot is logic and reason and how to convey via a technical argument, not a fight that you would have with Jay. In a technical argument, how can you describe reasons for your belief in God's existence? And to do that, let's do a real high view of what that looks like, because in a few minutes you're going to break into small groups and you're going to learn a real argument for God's existence. But right now, let's talk about what those arguments might look like before we dive deeper. And to do that, I have a prop. This is a watch. And we're going to use this watch to try to understand ways that we can prove via logic that God exists. So the first kind of category of arguments that try to prove that God exists are based on cause and effect. Let's talk about this watch. So this watch is made up of many, many different pieces: leather band, metal pieces, springs, gears on the inside. I don't know what a watch looks like on the inside, but it does stuff, so I assume it has stuff inside. What are the odds that all of those things just sort of randomly came together and made this watch? Or further, that the watch disassembled, willed itself to come together to form a watch? Almost certainly didn't happen. The effect that is this watch was caused by something else, right? So what caused the watch to come together? Somebody built the watch, right? But let's put that aside and accept the ridiculous notion that perhaps it did randomly come together to form a watch, or that it willed itself to come together. Well, where did the pieces come from? You would say, oh, I guess there are factories that make watch parts. Okay, great. Where did the factory come from? People built the factory that made the watch parts that then allowed the watch to will itself into watch existence. This makes no sense to me, but let's follow it anyway, because we're looking at a chain of cause and effect. So the effect is the watch, which is caused by the parts, which are an effect of the factory, which is caused by the people who built the factory. Okay, where did the people come from? And let's just go back and back, cause and effect, cause and effect. You can't have effects without causes, and most causes are also effects of earlier causes. Can you go back just infinitely of this cause and effect? You can't. That's called an infinite regress, something we can do in a separate video. But let's do a fun story to demonstrate that. There is this old tale that there was an astrophysicist giving a lecture explaining planets revolving around the sun and spinning, the universe, right? And a woman stands up in the back and says, "That's great. You're clearly intelligent, but I have an alternate theory." And the astrophysicist says, "Great, what's your alternate theory about how the universe functions?" And she says, "I happen to know that the Earth is balanced perfectly on the back of an enormous tortoise. A tortoise is a turtle on the land." And the astrophysicist says, "Oh, what's that tortoise on?" And she says, "Another enormous tortoise." And the astrophysicist says, "And that tortoise?" And she says, "Another tortoise." And he says, "Well, what are all of those tortoises on?" And she says, "Don't be dumb. It's just tortoises all the way down." That hurt my brain to think about tortoises all the way down. You can't just have an infinite chain. You have to have a first thing. There has to be a floor that that first tortoise is on. Also, the Earth is not based on a tortoise. There has to be a first thing, a first cause that had an effect, that caused an effect, that caused an effect, that caused an effect, all the way to you. There just has to be a first one, or else none of this would have happened. The cause and effect arguments for God. You're going to talk more about those in your small groups in just a second. Another way of thinking about how to argue for God's existence is kind of looking at complicated things, or looking at the universe and understanding that it's ordered or rational. it's kind of cool that scientists can tell us, like, in 57 years, 43 days, 16 hours, 9 minutes, and 32 seconds, a comet is going to be visible over Texas. How on earth do they know that? Well, because the comets do a rational thing, right? They're ordered in such a way that they behave predictably. Other things do that too, right? We can look and see order in the universe. Like, just look at math. Or how about, like, I forget what it's called, right? But like the proportion of your elbow to your hand is the same as the proportion of other parts of your body. So like it's ordered and clearly intended. So the fact that the universe is intelligent, right? It's ordered in a specific way, strongly suggests that an intelligence created said universe, right? If the universe was truly random and chaotic, you could argue that there is no God. However, the universe is clearly ordered and intelligent, and ordered and intelligent things don't happen randomly, otherwise they wouldn't be ordered and intelligent. Therefore, an ordered and intelligent thing created the entire universe. That's God. The third way that we can understand arguments for God's existence, purpose. Isn't it kind of cool that everything has a purpose? But where does that purpose come from? This is a pen. Or we can keep talking about the watch. They both have purposes. Purposes. Where does the purpose come from? Well, the thing that built it. The fact that the pen writes, the watch tells time, is because the watchmaker or the pen maker gave it its purpose. Interestingly enough, if you put a house plant just like out of the sunlight, but there's a window near it, isn't it kind of cool that the plant will grow in the direction of the sunlight so that it can continue to grow and be healthy? Well, did the plant choose that? Or was it designed to do that? So something made it. How about your central nervous system? I don't really understand anything about the central nervous system other than that you're a collection of nerves in a brain, but it serves a purpose. So something gave it that purpose. All of the universe, everything has a purpose. And so that purpose has to be given because purposes aren't random. So something designed all of the things, giving it the purpose. There has to be a thing that designed all the things. So those are the three categories that argue for God's existence. There's dozens, hundreds and hundreds of arguments for why there must be a God, but they generally all fall into those categories. And as the weeks move on, we're going to talk about a lot of those. And right now, I believe, Angie, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys are going to break out into small groups, and you're going to talk about one of my favorite people in human history, St. Thomas Aquinas, who offered the 5 ways to prove God's existence, or the Quinque Via, in his famous text, the Summa Theologica, that he wrote in the 13th century. This is one of the most famous collection of arguments for God's existence, and people have spent 800 years trying to prove Aquinas wrong, and generally have failed. They're really good arguments, and they're actually not that complicated. So now, go break into those small groups, get with your core team people, and let's learn some fun stuff. Thanks, guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week for another lesson. Bye.